His divine grace, Abhaya Chalananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada, Jai. ISKCON, founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, Jai. Anantakoti, Vaishnava, Jai. Namacharya, Srila Vedas Thakur, Jai. Reverend say, Oh Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Gadadhar, Shri Vasadi Gaur, Bhakta Vrinda Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna, Govinda, Sayan Kun, Radha Kun, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Charanam Ki Jai, Shri Dasani Ki Jai, Yuvadamaya Ki Jai, Shrimati Tulaside Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Go, Premananda. All glorious to the assembled devotee. All glorious to the assembled devotee. Glorious to the assembled devotee. All glorious to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. So we are reading today from the first canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 18, text 13. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Kulayama Gavenapi Swagam Bhavam Bhagavat Sangi Sangasha Arjanam Kim Utasishaha Tulayama Alavenapi Swargam Napunarvavan Bhagavat Sangi Sangasha Marchanam Kim Utasishaha Tulayama Alavenapi Swargam Napunarvavam Vatsangi Sangasya Archanam Kim Utasishaha Yamalavenapi Swargam Napunarvavam Bhavatsangi Sangasya Archanam Kim Utasishaha. Okay.
Tulayama Lavenapi Naswagam Napunarvavam Bhagavat Sangi Sangasya Motyanam Kemutashisaha
Tulayama Lavenapi Naswargam Napunabhavam Bhagavat Sangi Sangasya Machanam Kim Utasisha
Tulayama Lavenapi Naswargam Napunarbhavam Bhagavat Sangi Sangasya Martyanam Kim Utasishaha
Tulayama Lavenapi Swagam Napunarbhavam Bhagavat Sangi Sangasya Matyanam Kim Utasishaha
Ladies.
Tulayama Lavenapi Naswargam Napunarbhavam Bhagavat Sangi Sangasya Marchanam Kim Utasishaha Tulayama Lavenapi Naswargam Napunarbhavam Bhagavat Sangi Sangasya Martyanam Kim
Kim Utasishaha.
Alrighty. Tulayama.
Tulayama.
To be balanced with.
To be balanced with.
Lavena.
Lavena.
By a moment.
By a moment.
Happy.
Happy.
Even.
Even.
Na. Never.
Never.
Swargam.
Swargam.
Heavenly planets.
Heavenly planets.
Na.
Na.
Nor.
Nor.
Apuna Bhavam.
Aduna.
Liberation from matter.
Liberation from matter.
Bhagavat Sanghi.
Bhagavatam.
Devotee of the Lord.
Devotee of the Lord.
Sangasha.
Sangasha.
Of the association.
Of the association.
Marjanam.
Marjanam.
Those who are meant for death.
Those who are meant for death.
Kim.
Kim.
What is there?
What is there?
Uta.
Ta.
To speak of.
To speak of.
Ashishaha.
Ashishaha.
Worldly benediction.
Worldly benediction.
So, translation. The value of a moment's association with a devotee of the Lord cannot even be compared to the attainment of heavenly planets or liberation from matter. And what to speak of worldly benedictions in the form of material prosperity, which are for those who are meant for death. You can repeat. The value of a moment's association.
The value of a moment's association
with the devotee of the Lord.
With the devotee of the Lord.
Cannot even be compared.
Cannot even be compared.
To the attainment of heavenly planets.
To the attainment of heavenly planets.
Or liberation from matter.
Or liberation from matter.
And what to speak of worldly benedictions.
And what to speak of worldly benedictions.
In the form of material prosperity.
In the form of material prosperity.
Which are for those who are meant for death.
Which are for those who are meant for death.
So purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. When there are some similar points, it is possible to compare one thing to another. One cannot compare the association of a pure devotee to anything material. Men who are addicted to material happiness aspire to reach the heavenly planets like the moon, Venus, and Indraloka. And those who advance in material philosophical speculations aspire after liberation from all material bondage. When one becomes frustrated with all kinds of material advancement, one desires the opposite type of liberation, which is called apunar bhava, or no rebirth. But the pure devotees of the Lord do not aspire after the happiness obtained in the heavenly kingdom, nor do they aspire after liberation from material bondage. In other words, for the pure devotees of the Lord, the material pleasures obtainable in the heavenly planets are like phantasmagoria. And because they are already liberated from all material conceptions of pleasure and distress, they are factually liberated even in the material world. This means that the pure devotee of the Lord, or pure devotees of the Lord, are engaged in a transcendental existence, namely in the loving service of the Lord, both in the material world and in the spiritual world. As a government servant is always the same, either in the office or at home or at any place, so a devotee has nothing to do with anything material, for he is exclusively engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. Since he has nothing to do with anything material, what pleasure can he derive from material benedictions like kingship or other overlordships, which are finished quickly with the end of the body? Devotional service is eternal. It has no end because it is spiritual. Therefore, since the assets of a pure devotee are completely different from material assets, there is no comparison between the two. Sutta Goswami was a pure devotee of the Lord, and therefore his association with the rishis and naimisharanya is unique. In the material world, association with gross materialists is veritably condemned. The materialist is called the Yoshit Sangi, or one who is much attached to material entanglement, women and other paraphernalia, and of course that means for women, men and other paraphernalia. Such attachment is conditioned because it drives away the benedictions of life and prosperity. And just the opposite is Bhagavata Sanghi, or one who is always in the association of the Lord, with the Lord's name, form, qualities, etc. Such association is always desirable, is worshipable, is praiseworthy, and one may accept it as the highest goal of life. Great purport. So, Tuliyaman lavenapi nasvargam na punarbhavam bhagavat sangi sangasya marjanam kim utashishaha. So, Om Gana Timadandasha Gananjana Shlakya Chakshurudvinam Yena Tasmai Shiguruvedi Maha. So, this reminds me of the story that Srila Prabhupada told about Sanatana Goswami and the touchstone. Some of you have heard that story before, some of you have not. So anyway, once upon a time, there was a man who was worshipping Lord Shiva. And he was worshipping Lord Shiva for something very valuable in the material world, which is gold. A similar story to the Midas touch story that we're familiar with in the Western world. So he was worshipping Lord Shiva. He said, where can I get a lot of gold? And Lord Shiva said, well, would you like a touchstone? A touchstone is a stone which you can touch to anything, and it turns that thing to gold. Yeah, I'd like to have it too. I gotta be honest. Anyway, Lord Shiva said, you can have a touchstone if you go to Vrindavan, and there's this sage, Sanatana Goswami, has this touchstone, and just ask him for it. He'll be happy to give it to you. So he goes to Vrindavan, and he finds Sanatana Goswami and says, Sadhuji, can you please give me your touchstone? Lord Shiva sent me. And actually, Lord Shiva and Sanatana Goswami had a very intimate relationship. There's a temple of Chakaleshwar Mahadev, which is in the middle of the Manasi Ganga area. Anyone's been there? No. Anyway, Manasi Ganga is the Ganga created by Krishna's mind when he was told to go to the Ganges. He said, I ain't going to the Ganges. I'm staying here in Vrindavan. It's interesting. He went to the Ganges as Lord Chaitanya, but anyway, that's another story. So anyway, why did he say that? Or why was he told to go to the Ganges? Because he had just killed a calf. Very sinful. How could Krishna do such a thing? Vatsasura, the calf demon. So anyway, right in the middle of this Manasi Ganga. So Krishna created this Ganges from his mind. It's called the Manasi Ganga. Right in the middle of Govardhan. So, right in the middle of the Manasi Ganga, there's the Chakaleshwara Mahadev temple. It's called Chakaleshwara because Krishna's Sudarshan chakra hovered overhead of Govardhan and sort of dried everything up before Govardhan got too inundated when Indra was trying to kill all the residents of Vrindavan. So that's the Lord Shiva. He's the Dikpala. That means the protector or guardian of different aspects of the holy Dham. Just like in Vrindavan you have Gopishwara Mahadev, and Radhakund you have Kundeshwara Mahadev, so there's Chakaleshwara Mahadev. And so, anyway. So Sanatana Goswami was meditating there and doing his writing. Sanatana Goswami, of course, was disturbed there because there were all these mosquitoes. And so he thought, I got to find a better place to write. It's kind of hard to write if the mosquitoes are biting all the time. Even if you're a devotee, he doesn't like to be bitten by mosquitoes. So it's not that a pure devotee is just like so aloof from the material world that mosquitoes bite. I mean, sometimes you have certain examples, like that Vasudeva the leper who was, descendant of Chaitanya Charitamrita. He was so detached from the material world, he would take the worms that fell out of his body and put it back in. I think most of you know that story. So, but Sanatana Goswami had a service to do. And his service is writing. You can't write very well if mosquitoes are biting you all the time. So he got ready to leave, and Lord Shiva said, please don't leave here. I like your association. So And if you stay, I will get rid of the mosquitoes. So Lord Shiva got rid of all the mosquitoes at this place. So Lord Shiva and Sanatana Goswami are very much connected in this way. And actually the pure devotees are always connected with Lord Shiva because Vaishnavana, Yata Shambhu, Vaishnava, of all Vaishnavas, Shambhu, Lord Shiva is considered the best. Because he's most merciful, because in his temple there's a whole bunch of witches and goblins and ghosts. It's a nice temple, isn't it? Fortunately, they don't have to send all the names of his people who joined his temple to the Child Protection Organization. They don't have to screen anyone. In fact, it's reverse screening. So therefore, he's considered the greatest Vaishnava. Anyway, so look, getting back to the story. So Lord Shiva sent him Sanatana. So Sanatana Goswami was there, and the Brahmin said to him, "Can I have your touchstone?" Sanatana Goswami said, "Yeah, it's in the garbage pile." And so, but I'm thinking this Brahmin, devotee, soon to be devoted, went to the garbage pile. Got it. He got, wow, honey ball. And so he started to turn everything to gold. He turned his prasadam into gold. I don't know if he turned his wife into gold. Probably didn't tell that story. But at least the wife won't talk too much if she's gold. So anyway, he turned everything into gold. He was really ecstatic. And of course, Bhagavatam describes that if someone's attached to gold in this material world, it's like the yellow stool that one has when one has jaundice. And it's also in Kali Yuga, which in this particular case the story did occur in Kali Yuga, because it was about 500 years ago. Kali Yuga, it's where Kali resides. So it's not really something that we desire to have a lot of gold. I mean, for Krishna, yes, Prabhupada said you take a picture of gold, but I know in Indian culture there's a lot of emphasis in ladies having a lot of gold. And India is the largest consumer of gold in the world. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. That's interesting.
Yeah, because of the jewelry and everything like that. And so I have one disciple in India who was looking for a nice wife, and he says, I don't want to marry anyone in India because they're only interested in jewelry. I mean, I know there's some girls who are not interested in jewelry, but he was referring to the people he knew. He's a graduate of IIT, Indian Institute of Technology, and all the girls that he ever met are just like interested in the Western mode of life, and actually jewelry, a combination of Indian opulence and Western opulence. It's a deadly combination. Mm-hmm. So getting back to the point, so this Brahmin, he was very happy, but then after a while he started to think, this is not giving me happiness. Avatam jnana maitena jnanino nijavayana kamarupena kuntaya, just praying the language out, because the more you have, the more you want. It really works like that. You're never satisfied. It burns like fire, according to the Bhagavad Gita. So the Brahmin thought, hey, this touchstone was in the garbage. And Sanatana Goswami kept it in his garbage. Or so he went back to Sanatana Goswami and thought, there's something better here. And he said to Sanatana Goswami, do you have something better? And Sanatana Goswami said, yeah, I do, but you got to throw the touchstone into the river. So the guy was having some trauma at that particular point. In conflict theory, that's called approach avoidance. There's different things that cause people conflict in this world. When you study psychology, there's a branch of psychology that deals with conflicts. There's approach, where you got two nice things, you don't know which one you got to do. You want to go to Mayapur or Vrindavan. There's approach avoidance, which is in this case, don't want to throw the stone into the river. At the same time, I want something better. There's also avoidance. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. That's avoidance. Oh my God. would you like to go to the doctor in Picayune or the doctor in Heidelberg? You know. Would you like to go to this dentist or that dentist? That's avoidance, comfort. So this guy was having, he was having trauma here. He was shaking it, holding the stone, getting ready to throw it in the river, and then he goes, oh no, I can't do that. My whole life I've lived for this. And so it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Finally, he just goes, oh my God, I gotta do it. And he just closes his eyes, throws the stone into the river. He goes, oh God, what did I do? Then he goes to Sanatana Goswami, you got something better? And Sanatana Goswami says, yes. Listen to this mantra, you know, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. And he started to chant, and by Sanatana Goswami's association, he actually, it was because of Sanatana Goswami's association that he developed this taste for chanting, as described by Srila Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which Prabhupada commented on as Nectar of Devotion, that by the association of a devotee, you can get this thing called shadow attachment. You know, if a devotee is giving kirtan, a Bhagavatam class, or just, you know, being in the same areas as devotee, you can actually experience ecstasy. It's not hard, transcendental, but it's a shadow of it, you know, it's a reflection of it. And you actually can experience the ecstasy. So in the beginning, even in the beginning, he was experiencing ecstasy. I think many of us in the Krishna conscious movement experienced ecstasy when we first met Prabhupada. I mean, any of you who met Prabhupada, there's a few of us here, that it was just like, I remember the first time I saw Prabhupada walked in the room, it was like the spiritual world was there, and the room expanded into eternity. I think we've all had that experience, isn't it? That the room expanded into eternity. I didn't have a material body, I was liberated, because I ain't liberated anymore, but anyway. But it was just like an amazing experience, just by being in the association of physical association with pure devotee, or hearing, like I mentioned the other day, that when we heard Prabhupada on the radio chanting, it was a similar type of experience. Now, why is that? You know, just even a moment's association, which is being described here. Of course, there's other verses in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you know, Sadhu Sangha, famous verse. Lavamatra Sadhu Sangha, Sarvasati, or even a moment's association gives all perfection. So I was thinking about this, why is that? And this is also explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Brahmanda Brahmate Kona Onyuan Jiva Krishna Prasada Bhakti Bhakti Lata Beach. That the living entity has been wandering throughout all the universes, in all the different species of life, and, you know, we're not happy. We tried everything. We just engaged in something that's called Punat Purnas Char Vita Char Vadana. You know, Adanta Gopir, Vishakam, Mishram, Purnas Char Vita Char. We're chewing the chew. In other words, you tried it before. As the great sage Albert Einstein said, that insanity, he defined insanity as doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So that's like probably sometimes would say, who's crazy? Like, you know, you have people who like obsessive, compulsive, you know, like compulsive behavior, you know, like washing the hands all the time, like Lady Macbeth. No, none of you know that. None of you read Shakespeare?
I know she was, but she was so ridden by guilt. That she
ridden by guilt. She kept washing her hands. She thought she had blood on her hands. Like, she did have blood on her hands, figuratively. So out damn spot. He's our dramatist there. So you get, so, you know, it's like this obsessive behavior. You keep doing the same thing. And, you know, we also do that sometimes too, even as devotees. We may be trying to enjoy our tongue, which we say in the Krishna prayer is most voracious and uncontrollable. And then we suffer because of it, for one reason or other, health, or, just pain or something like that. But we just can't stop doing it. It's like an addiction. Addiction? Addiction means you just can't stop doing it. You have to join Narcotics Anonymous or any of these anonymous clubs. Chanters Anonymous, Krishna Anonymous. Anyway, so many anonymous clubs where you can't tell anybody who joined with you. So this is insanity. Just keep doing the same thing, Won't you learn? There's a song. Oh my God! All these songs. When I see Go Cool, I remember all these songs. Oh my God! Does the chewing gum lose its flavor on the bedpost overnight? Why does your association bring out all these songs? My memory becomes like perfect from the 1950s and 60s.
I'm a personification of that.
Well, because you're from New York and you're saying, same sort of situation I was from. So just like it stimulates certain things. It's not his fault, it's my fault. So anyway, so that's insanity, to keep doing the same thing, and there's no happiness from it. And so all of a sudden, we do get happiness when we come in contact with a pure devotee. And why is that? Because we get the Bhakti Lata Beach. Because the reason we're not happy, according to Srila Prabhupada, is we have a loving propensity. This is in the beginning of the Krishna book. And that loving propensity has been frustrated. Another song. Can't get no satisfaction. Anyway. Yet it's been completely frustrated. Like Prabhupada said, he once gave the example, shine a light in a box. That's what we're doing. It doesn't go very far. But if you shine a light out in the sky, especially the laser beam, Prabhupada would say those people, it goes on unlimitedly, basically. So right now we have this little box we're shining our loving propensity. That means our dog or whatever, or our clothes, or our jewelry, or mundane relationships, or our car, or, in my case, my computer. Everybody focuses their loving relationship in a different way. We're all different strokes for different folks. So, and we just get frustrated. And then, or like, the typical example I always give, we have a good picture of this in my book, the Madhva-priya of a child at Christmas, right? Opening up the presents, you're looking expectation, opening up the presents, and then, Clothes. Oh, I hated that. I hated that. I wanted toys. Anyway, so, but even if it's something you wanted, it's just, you have that experience. But anyway, so we want this happiness to increase. Ananta, unlimited happiness, unlimited loving propensity. And, even in like mundane love in this world, boy meets a girl, and I guess the different hormones get going, and as the scientists say, the brain scan is the same as when one snorts cocaine. That's why it's more dangerous to drive when one's in love than drinking 10% alcohol in your system. Anyway, I know you can't have 10%, but it's dangerous. People run into trees when they're in love. And so anyway, so that lasts for about 6 months. And then you've got to work hard on a relationship. So, but we want that falling in love business to always be there. Just like in the pastimes of Krishna and the gopis, it's always there. That falling in love, like a moment's separation is like a yuga cycle. I mean, it's not that Radharani said that once. She always feels like that. I mean, Krishna, like you read about the rasa dance. When Krishna left the gopis because they had become a little proud of the rasa dance, they just became mad, looking for him. Everywhere, they were just looking for him. They were imitating his activities. One gopi acted like the Kaliya serpent, another gopi acted as Krishna on her head. And they just became completely mad, madly in love. And then even when they meet, then there's anxiety about separation. I mean, that's love. I mean, that's really, wow, isn't it? I mean, when the gopis are together with Krishna, they're in anxiety, when are we going to be separated? And, then there's the Purva before they meet. I mean, it's always intense emotions. So we are meant to experience these intense emotions, which we had a sample of when we first met Srila Prabhupada, or heard Prabhupada, or read Prabhupada's books, right? I mean, it's just like, wow, that's a coming attraction. Of course, we sort of lost that taste now because we've committed offenses against Vaishnavas. Like this verse talks about the importance of the Vaishnava association. Well, many of us have done the opposite, including myself. Because before we joined the movement, we never offended a Vaishnava. Because we didn't know any Vaishnavas to offend. And now we know a lot of Vaishnavas to offend. And, when you live with people, it's easier to find fault than when you don't live with people. Like, someone walks down the street, a stranger, I'm not going to find fault in him. You know why? I don't know him. But someone who I live with, always I'm looking for fault. That's my propensity. Just like when I was young, I lived with my mother, obviously. And, I was like, she nags too much, she talks too much. She's my mother. What the hell am I doing? Looking for fault in my mother. So anyway, we're like little mosquitoes or even worse, like flies, that look for the fault. And so then we're committing offenses against each other all the time, making politics with each other, not appreciating each other, because of the first offense on chanting. Like, why is that the first offense on chanting? Why not have another offense on chanting as the first, considering the chanting of holy names to be one of the ritualistic activities mentioned in the Vedas. The first offense, because it's called the mad elephant offense, because it tramples the same thing that Prabhupada or other pure devotees have put in our hearts, the bhakti like a beach, which is from that verse, Brahmanda Brahmate, because it actually tramples the seed of the creeper that's growing from the seed, beach meaning the seed, of course, and the creeper that's growing. So we have to be extremely careful. So anyway, getting back to the point, the pure devotee gives us this bhakti lata bij. Prabhupada gave us this bhakti lata bij. And the interesting thing, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, is that even Krishna doesn't give devotion. Bhakti is independent, not under the control of Krishna. Of course, you could say ultimately everything's under the control of Krishna, but Krishna is given bhakti that independence. And so bhakti can only be obtained from Krishna's pure devotee. That's it. That's why the association of a pure devotee is the most valuable thing, more valuable than having association with Krishna. It is association with Krishna, but association with Krishna through devotion. So the pure devotee gives us like a heart transplant. Some of you have had, no one's here had heart transplant, but you had heart surgery. But the pure devotee gives us a heart transplant. He just puts this bhakti in our hearts. And then we cultivate it, of course, by the process of hearing and chanting, following the rules and regulations, worshiping the deities. I understand all that, preaching Krishna consciousness. So this is why it works. And also the pure devotee gives us instructions on how to cultivate bhakti. Not only does he give us bhakti, but he tells us, he gives us gardening instruction, like some of you are gardeners here. Like, when you garden, you have to be very careful of your pH of the soil. pH means the acid alkaline balance, of course. You have to be careful of that. There has to be enough water. You have to keep the animals out. Because like yesterday we were at someone's garden and they were telling me about these wild pigs that come and destroy the garden. Oh my God. Wild pigs. Boars. And then you have to keep the insects out or do something with the insects, obviously. You know, like a companion plant out of plants, like marigolds or something like that, keep insects. I mean, there's different things. I'm not a gardener. I don't know about these things. You have to have the right weather. So the pure devotee gives us the instruction. That's the second reason why his association is so important. I mean, we have Prabhupada's association in his books. I mean, Prabhupada's instructions are there, how to cultivate the Bhakti Latapija. So that's another reason. Another reason why the pure devotee's association is important is because Krishna becomes pleased when we serve the pure devotee. Like Prabhupada gave the example of, like, if you please someone's dog, then the person is pleased. Because like yesterday I was at someone's house, I was getting ready to please their dog, and, you know, maybe they'll like me. No, because they wouldn't that attached to the dog. But like that's why politicians, they generally go around and you know, kiss babies or pick. They don't kiss them anymore. They used to when I was young. They say, "What a cute little baby!" And the parents think, "I got to vote for him, even if it's Donald Trump." Oh, sorry. Even if it's he who cannot be named, you'll vote. You'll vote for him because, wow, he's nice. He liked my baby, or he liked my dog, or he liked my whatever, wife or husband, or whatever it is. So Krishna becomes very pleased when we serve the pure devotee. So that's another method or reason. Anyway, so there's many examples of this, of how people became liberated, not liberated simply, but how people became Krishna conscious by association, a moment's association with the pure devotee. I'll give one or two examples to finish up. One example, of course, is the famous story of Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj, his association was when he was in the womb of his mother, Kayadu. He was in Narada Muni's ashram. Narada Muni's ashram, incidentally, is also at Govardhan. There's a place called Nardakund. Anyone's been to Nardakund, Govardhan?
Where is it, Maharaja?
It's opposite from Kushama Sarovara, about 100 meters off from the Parikrama path. And anyway, you're all invited to come with me sometime when we do Govardhan Parikrama. We know all these little secret places. So this Nardakund is where Narada Muni took Kayadu when Hiranyakashipu was engaged in meditation, and he took her to his ashram. And the reason he could have an ashram, because he was cursed actually, not to remain in any place. The reason he could have an ashram is because in Braj, curses don't work.
Braj curses don't work.
In
Braj curses.
In Braj, curses don't work. It's not the material world. Curses only work in the material world. So the temples of ISKCON are like that too. So if you've been cursed by somebody, just go to a temple. Stay there. And that doesn't work. Or make your house Krishna conscious at least. But if you're in the material world, curses work. Because Prabhupada also gave a funny story of how he was cursed by his parents and his disciples to always travel. And Prabhupada said, I'm transferring that to my disciples. His disciples. So anyway, so Narada Muni instructed Prahlad Maharaj, and Prahlad Maharaj was in the womb, and Prahlad Maharaj became Krishna conscious because of that association. That's why. That's exactly why Prahlad Maharaj became Krishna conscious. I think he was ready too. I mean, there's other stories in the Puranas about that. So, and then you have the story of the dacoit in the Ramayana, who was killing people, robbing people, and then the Saptarishis came. The real story is the Saptarishis came. That's from the Valmiki Ramayana. And he tried to rob the 7 great rishis. He said, "Give me your money." And they said, "Aren't you aware this is a very sinful activity?" And he said, "That's all right, it's my job." You know, some people have to work in the supermarket or whatever. So, and they said, "Well, why are you doing it?" And he said, "I'm doing it to please or to serve my wife and children." And they said, "Well, if you're doing it to serve your wife and children, why don't you go and ask them if they're willing to share some of the karma, the bad karma?" And so he went, and he said, "Priya," because that's how in India they call their wives, "Priya, can you take some of my bad karma?" And she said, "Hell no. Keep working, bring me those saris and gold." And he got a little disappointed. He said, "What happened to our love?" And she said, "You show your love for me. We'll talk about it later." And so then he went to his son. I'm going to put this in a little modern context. He went to his son and daughter, and he said, "Will you share my karma?" And they said, no, you have to get us some iPads and iPods and iPhones." And he got really disappointed, went back to the 7 great rishis and said to them, "What should I do?" And they said, "Can you chant the names of Ram?" And he said, "No, I'm too sinful." And actually, Gita says, the whole world will be joyful hearing your name, for the demons become afraid and run here and there. So anyway, so he said, "I'm too simple." And they said, "All right, we'll give you another mantra, Mara," which means death. It's like a rap song or something like that. Mara, Mara, and which turned to Ram. So anyway, by their association and accepting their instructions, he started chanting Ram. Mara, Mara, Ram, Ram, Ram. You know that story. And then he became such a great devotee that he was able to write the Ramayana. He was able to host Sita Devi in his ashram. He was one of the great sages of all time. Because these sages initiated him. Not simply Ram's name, but Ram's name given in disciplic succession from the sages. And because, as we mentioned yesterday, the name of the Lord is not simply a movement of the lips and the tongue. It's just not that. The Shuddhanam. Namabhasa is a different thing, but the Shuddhanam is coming down in disciplic succession. And therefore, the proof that he was engaged in Shuddhanam was that he gave up his material attachments. Anyway, so many stories. I can go on and on about stories about Magrari, the hunter's another story. I mean, we have so many stories. I mean, what to speak of all of us, we're at story and millions of stories. Millions of stories. Each and every one of us has a story of how we came to Krishna consciousness. We came in contact, we got woken up, we became vegetarians, whatever, just by association with a devotee. Even not reading Prabhupada's books, like association with Prabhupada, or hearing Prabhupada on the radio, like I mentioned. And that really is the secret, even for a moment. And so that, just to end the whole discussion or talk, is that that's our business to go out and get people that moment's association. Whether it's through the Harinam, through book distribution, through on the internet, like I said, using electronic media, you can use that media to give people association, but we should be enthusiastic to do that. And don't be disappointed if they don't become Krishna conscious immediately, because it takes time. You're planting a seed. Seeds take time to fructify. It may be next life, maybe not two lifetimes from now, but you assure their spiritual success by giving them association, with Prabhupada. Our business is to give people association with Prabhupada. Okay, any questions or comments about these points?
Do you know the location where threw the touchstone in the river?
I'm not going to tell you.
I'm just interested in history.
Okay. Come with me to Govardhan.
Yeah, you tell them it'll be history.
Yeah. And I'll show you. Yeah.
So what about Yukta Vairagya? What about utilizing that touchstone in Krishna's service?
Yeah, well, that particular time, gold would not have helped him spread the Krishna consciousness movement. That's a little bit different. Nowadays, of course, it would certainly help us. But what would he have done with the gold? You know, I mean, what, build a chariot or something like that and go around and preach Krishna consciousness? I mean, he just didn't, it wasn't his particular duty to do that. Whereas we have other devotees who utilize material opulence to spread, like Prabhupada, of course. Or even Chitraketu, he was flying around in an airplane with, taking the ladies' Sankirtan party out. Because he made a mistake, but that's another story. So, yeah, so in this particular case, it wasn't appropriate. If he could have used it in Krishna service, like the Goswamis, certainly, there's that story that Raghunath Das Goswami wanted to excavate the kunds and make Radha Kund, you know, very, let's say, it's always been a nice place, but more together from a material perspective. And he was thinking, how can I excavate the kunds? I don't have any money. And then there was a devotee in the Himalayas, who was worshiping Narayan or something like that. And he got the message as he was worshiping. He was ready to give a big donation there. Take that donation and give it to Raghunath Das Goswami. Go to Radha Kund. So he went to Radha Kund and gave that donation. Raghunath Das Goswami utilized that. But also he was very careful because of his previous history of being from a very rich family. He didn't want to put anything in his own name. So you'll see that the properties at Radha Kund were put in the name of Jiva Goswami instead of Raghunath Das Goswami. And Raghunath Das Goswami was the main acharya. He organized everything, but Raghunath Das Goswami was very careful about coming in touch with opulence again. And, you know, Jiva Goswami, he was actually the youngest of the Goswamis. Yeah.
You know, another point is that that gentleman who had that touchstone, his guru ordered him to put the touchstone in the river.
That's right. It was his guru. That's a good point. Yeah, it wasn't simply on his own prerogative he did that. I mean, Prabhupada said that they could take a picture of him raking in the money. You know, when there was a Mayavadi pushing it away. So, I mean, we could certainly, but it's very dangerous. Like you see, many instances of devotees who obtain some opulence, it destroys their spiritual life. So one has to be very, very careful in dealing with material opulence. In fact, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states that that's the final source of an artist with the byproduct of bhakti. In other words, what are the byproducts of bhakti? And not simply devotion. One gets appreciation from other people. You know, you sit on a big seat, people praise you, and people may give you donations or something like that. And so you become enamored by that. You know, it's very dangerous. You know, dealing with the material energy for Krishna, we talk about Yukta Vairagya, but it's actually very dangerous. You know, Dhanam Janam Sundari Kavitam Bhajavati Shikamaya. We always have to remember we're servants and we don't nirvana moha. We don't own anything. We're just using it for Krishna. We're borrowing. Just like myself, when I borrow someone's car, I'm very reluctant to do that. I'm much more careful than I am when I'm driving my own car. Isn't it? And when you borrow someone else's. So, because we're borrowing this body and the material elements of this body and the intelligence and the strength and ability from Krishna, we have to understand it belongs to Krishna. And so it's very difficult to understand that when one gets material wealth, more material wealth or appreciation. And we've seen so many stalwarts have actually fallen down, and even in our society, because they've gotten material opulence. You know, not just money, we're talking about appreciation, followers, things like that. Very dangerous. And Krishna talks about this. It's a source of anarthas. So one has to be careful. It's like, you know, like if you're an electrician. Okay, here's an example. If you're dealing with electricity, yes, you can do so many nice things with electricity. But if you're not careful, guess what? You get electrocuted. Seriously. I mean, many electricians, you know, the high wire people, they actually touch the wrong thing at the wrong time if they're not attentive, like a razor's edge, and then instant cremation. So, yeah.
Maharaja, you were talking about making offenses against devotees. It's especially difficult when you live in a community. What if somebody had the idea that better I just don't associate with devotees and avoid offenses?
So then you lose out. Then you lose out in the association. You know, just like someone. All right, here's another example I just thought of. It's just like eating. You know, like if you eat certain things, they make you sick. So better I don't eat anything. That's not very intelligent. You know, if you're allergic, like nowadays people are allergic to peanuts. A lot of people, right? Actually, it's interesting, in the temple, many of the temples I'm in charge of, I tell them, don't cook peanuts from now on, don't have peanuts. The reason is, because you're liable if someone comes to the temple and they eat peanuts and they die or something happens, you are liable. Because of it, the airlines don't have peanuts anymore. For that reason. Okay. So let's say you're allergic to peanuts, and then just say, well, I'm not going to eat any food then. Then you'll starve. It's not intelligent. So if something's beneficial, you have to know how to apply it. It's not that you give up the beneficial thing. Like that, you have to really be careful. I mean, it's like driving a car. Driving a car is dangerous too. So you're going to stop driving a car because it's dangerous? Doesn't make sense, you know. But you have to be careful, that's all. There's a lot, practically everything in this world has some danger to it or a negative side to it. But you're not going to stop doing it because the positive outweighs the potential danger. So the same thing with devotee association. It's just a question of being careful. And not only avoiding, that's a negative, being positive about the devotees. When you see a devotee, think positively. It's such a rare thing to have a devotees association, isn't it? Now here we are having so many nice devotees association, and we're taking it for granted. It's just rare. I mean, we're a very, count your good fortune, or consider your good fortune. Look at what Prabhupada has given us. Look at we're surrounded by devotees. And yeah, you know, they're not that we're stupid, and if someone does something wrong, we just say, you're a devotee. You put salt in the sweet rice, or, you know, salt in it. Like one time, or several times, people put salt in the charnamrita. And Prabhupada took it. There's a story like that. Prabhupada said, it's salt. And who did this? You know, obviously, you know, such a priyatama, if you could do something beneficially, then you can find fault. And also it's the business of the spiritual master finding fault in the disciple. That's why it's so nice to be a guru. Because finding fault is actually your service at that point. No, I'm just teasing.
Or is he?
It's a Freudian slip. Anyway, so we have to be careful and appreciate. And if we do correct someone, it has to be done in such a priyatama. Oh, I got one already.
Well, no wonder. I've been looking for that all over the place.
Yeah, I saw it. I thought you put it up there, and I took it.
Okay,
You want to give me another one?
That's for tomorrow.
You are very merciful. See? No, because I thought, oh, she has so much devotion, she left it for me on the platform over there. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyway, so I was overly intelligent. So anyway, so it's just nice living with devotees. Otherwise, living with people who are not Krishna, it's like living in a cage of fire or tigers or something like that, the Acharya would say, isn't it? I mean, it just, you know, I get the creeps when I'm, it's an interesting expression. I just want to be with devotees. I mean, I like everyone, I like non-devotees, but it's just like, you know, you want to deal with your own people. You just, like if you go to Mars and meet the Martians with their little antennas, you'll feel good if you meet someone from the home planet. Isn't it? You know, they're interesting, the Martians, I'll make friends with them, you know, shake hands or whatever they have. So, any other questions? Yes.
Maharaj, a moment's association with a pure devotee is beneficial, but what is the consciousness that we should have in such an exchange?
Well, it depends. If it's the first time we ever came in contact with it, it's just like, wow, what is that?
We could be offensive.
Oh yeah, you don't want to be offensive. You know, if you see a pure devotee in terms of material distinction, was that a charyam, you know, yaniyam nakamani etakari chitnamarchi bujusuni tavadeva, then this is actually hellish intelligence, like looking at the deities and seeing the deities being made of stone, you know. The pure devotee, according to the physical, you know, they may have some physical imperfections. You know, we consider it to be physical imperfection, but he's just driving around the body. The body's not the person. You don't judge a person by his car. I mean, just like the founder of Walmart, Sam Walton, he's not a good one. But the reason I'm using him as an example, he drove around in an old pickup truck. Right? Does everybody know about Sam Walton? He had like a beat-up old pickup truck, and he was a multi-billionaire. Amazing, isn't it? So sometimes, you know, a pure devotee may be driving around in a beat-up old body. Or an attractive young body, it doesn't matter. So we judge things. So what's the right consciousness? First of all, don't judge people by their cover. Don't judge a book by its cover, as they say. We judge a pure devotee based, we don't judge, but we see a pure devotee based on what they say. And there's that other example, the jackal story probably, that, you know, the poison is the speaking, Guru Mukha Padmantakya, Chitte Yate, Kodiya Aikya. Not by, you know, oftentimes we're very much attached to, like, to see what we see. And that's often deceptive. You know, people vote for a candidate many times because the candidate's handsome or beautiful or something like that. It was the case of Kennedy. That's why Kennedy got elected. Nixon was ugly as hell. Anyway, so the perception that we have of the personality, as that improves, the relationship also... it becomes one of service. One just thinks, you know, how can I serve? You know, and that Prabhupada said, that's the only question. Like in the beginning, how did Prabhupada approach a spiritual master? He was challenging a little bit. He was saying, who will accept your Chaitanya while India is still a captive nation? But then when a spiritual master showed that he actually knew, you know, Krishna, and knew about the material world and everything, Prabhupada accepted him. And then Prabhupada said the only question he ever asked the spiritual master was, what? How can I serve? So the relationship got transformed as Prabhupada realized, you know, the extent or the position of the spiritual master. So relationships are not static, they're ecstatic or they're dynamic. Okay, I think we have to end now. It's time for prasadam. Okay, all glories to His divine grace. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jai.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Srila Prabhupada, Jai.